Please welcome Maya Hawk, who plays Robin, Sadie Singh, who plays Max, and Emmy Award-winning casting director Carmen Cuba. Welcome, have a seat, grab a mic. We have to be protective of spoilers for the show. I've seen up through episode 5, and I'm like, wow, there's a lot in the trailer. Like, I think it's out of context, so it's like the spoiler is a little bit like walled off and protected. But obviously, a very quiet time in Hawkins. Not much happening. Your characters have gone through a lot, it's fair to say. Where would you say we pick up with them as this season begins?
I mean, I guess well, for all of the kids, really, they're entering high school. They're freshmen in high school now, so...
It's been 3 years, right, since you shot the last one?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess so, or 3 years since we released it?
3 years, yeah, just since you released it, so even longer then.
So we look a little bit older than we probably should in terms of this storyline.
That's true of all of us.
Gloss over that, but yeah, they're entering high school, and I guess just kind of like struggling with everything that comes with that in terms of figuring out where you land in that environment. So friendships are changing, interests are changing, and then of course it's Stranger Things, so there has to be some supernatural stuff thrown in there, of course.
Maya, how about you and Robin? What's her state of mind as we meet her in season 4?
Well, I can't say that this is like deeply delved into, but in my own kind of private work on the character, I think that, you know, everyone responds to trauma differently, and traumatic experiences introduce different things into different people's lives. And I think for Robin, the events of season 3 were both horrible and intense, but also brought relationships into her life that were really rewarding, and an intimacy with Joe, and that is a friendship that she didn't really have yet in her life. And I think that especially when you open up the season, there's a lot of joy in that, and a lot of like excitement about community and camaraderie and being brought together around a common cause and a common enemy that kind of combats a lot of that disaffected loneliness from the first season that I think Robin had.
Well, I happened to have just spoken to the Duffer Brothers this afternoon, and I was like, you know, I'm writing a story for Vanity Fair previewing the show that's going to drop on Friday, and I was like, is it okay to say this? Like, I don't want to ruin your surprises, but one of the things they were comfortable talking about in advance is that, you know, the threat this season really preys upon the most vulnerable people, the ones who've suffered the most. They described it as like Jaws, being able to detect where your legs are, who's kicking their legs, and who's a weak swimmer. And I think Max has had it particularly bad. So if Robin is actually in a good place, Max is particularly vulnerable because she's still mourning her brother. I mean, how would you describe the way she's moving on or not from the things that we've seen happen to her?
Yeah, so Max and her stepbrother Billy had a very complicated relationship, but his death and witnessing his death obviously brought on a lot of trauma for Max. So when we pick up in season 4, she's still processing all of it, and, you know, being Max, she kind of doesn't want to be vulnerable, and she doesn't want people to see her in any kind of like weakness in her, I guess. So that causes her to kind of shut herself off and completely isolate herself from the people that would care and help the most. So it ends up backfiring. And with the villain this year, I thought it was a really genius way to kind of tie it into the show, like just because we never really stop and focus on the trauma that the characters are experiencing, but having a villain that kind of feeds off of that vulnerability was, I think, just a genius idea on the Duffers' end.
Do you both have any thoughts about, I guess, the metaphorical side of that you know, not everybody knows what it's like to be menaced by like a trans-dimensional being, but everybody's grown up, gone through high school, and we all know there are people who appear to be doing well who aren't, and people who front. and other people who are doing great, but you wouldn't assume that they're living their best life. And I wondered if you see this season as being symbolic of anything that's kind of universal in the way that people grow up.
Yeah. I mean, this is not going to be a useful anecdote, but I can't help myself. But I was taking an exercise class a couple days ago, and in the exercise class, the teacher said something, and they were like, "Oh, if you can see it, it's not you." Like if the voice you hear in your head that's criticizing you and telling you that you're not good enough, not strong enough, not as good as the other person, if you can like see that there's that voice telling you that, and it's not really you. You don't really think those things about yourself. And the only thing I could think about was, God, I wish I went to this class in high school. Like, God, high school was such an unbelievably painful time, full of so many voices and so much trauma and so much pain and self-discovery that like things happen that I'm only now unpacking. And I think that for everybody universally has those experiences because you're just entering adulthood and it's so intense. But I think the beautiful thing about the show is, to me, even though it's really just being so delved into in this season, the show, even when I was a fan of it, the Upside Down stood for depression to me. It stood for trauma and anxiety and fear and the dark sides of our imagination that plague us. And the reason that the people who are dealing with it in the most intense way are these kind of pubescent kids and teenagers is because that's when that monster kind of wakes up, both inside you and in the Upside Down. And you have to get into your adulthood, you have to defeat it. You have to get through those years. And the show has always been a metaphor for that to me.
That was a great anecdote. You undersold it.
Well, it started with the exercise class, which like I don't know if actually was the necessary part, but I stuck the landing.
Sadie, do you have any thoughts on that? On what this season has to say that's sort of universal, or that everybody kind of goes through, whether they're young or old?
Yeah, I think definitely high school, but also like the distance. Everyone's kind of spread out, and I think everyone's just trying to like figure out themselves outside of the party, and who are they when they're not like, you know, just a part of like the Hellfire Club or like so with the buyers moving to California, and especially 11 leaving as well and having that power kind of taken away, they kind of have to discover who they are, I don't know, without all the bells and whistles. Without the superhero, yeah.
Carmen, you've been putting together this cast, adding people, subtracting people, I guess, as the story progresses. Maya and Sadie are just two members of a pretty vast cast, and I wondered if you had any thoughts about how they gel together, what you...
Just two members?
Well, the two best members.
They're my two favorite members tonight.
I should just say, just two of many. That's all I intended to say. But it's a very big cast, and you have to figure out how they gel together. You have to add new people. Tell us what kind of work did you have to do in preparation for season 4?
Well, first of all, I want to point out that I'm having this feeling as I sit on the stage with these two women about how fantastic they are and how articulate they are about not only their work, but the sort of deeper meaning of all of these things. And I really admire that because I met them when they were children. And to watch them just develop into these not only spokespeople for the show, but for themselves means a lot to me. It's meaningful to me. Bravo, you two. And all of them, like that's a big, I mean, you didn't ask me this. This isn't the question you asked me, but it's a big part of the experience for me is just watching these former children come into themselves through the characters and as themselves, for sure. But sorry, what was the question?
The question, actually, I'm going to change the question because I like where you're going.
Okay.
You know, you cast people in roles and they grow, especially when they're young actors. And I wondered if you have a perspective on how these wonderful two have evolved. What specific changes in the actor do you see reflected in the characters?
Well, I think that's a beautiful thing that the Duffers are able to really tap into. Is they're even in the starting with the audition process, like with Sadie. How old were you? I mean, we were
14.
Yeah, we were in a tiny room in New York City auditioning a handful of girls, and all very different. You know, when we're looking for these parts, we're not looking at 5 Sadies to fill that part. We're looking at 5 different people that can take us in all different directions with the character. And the Duffers really have a way of tapping into the specificity of the person that they fall in love with for the part, and then writing to it. And so the characters get deeper as the Duffers see more and more of them, and as the actors. And this particular group is very, very special in the sense that they show themselves. They don't, and maybe part of it is that they were kids to begin with, so they were more open and available to be seen growing up, and to share that with the Duffers, which then the Duffers reflected back in the characters. So I think it's really special. It's really incredible, and their level of craft is, you know, it's not just that these are like interesting humans, which they are. And me, as a casting director, you know, part of what I love about my job, the biggest part for me is that I'm just a person who has a big curiosity and love of humans. So I'm just looking for humans that I love to put into these parts that I connect with. And every single one in this cast represents a different version of that for me.
And so my original question was, who's new? Who you added to the mix this season?
Well, you've seen more of it than I have. I'm not sure what I'm allowed to say or not. So there are definitely very interesting characters. We have added more. It's if you saw any of the premiere photos from last week, there are way too many people to even fit into one photo. I would say we could talk about Joe Quinn, right? He's a big part this year, and but each season, finding new people, you sort of hope that you can find ones that match up to the already existing cast, and somehow we do it. And again, I credit the Duffers, because the writing is so solid that actors can shine. So it's not hard to find great people. It's just hard to find the ones that will fit in exactly right and will be singular, opposite the rest of the cast. So yeah.
So Maya and Sadie, what can you tell us about the dynamic among you and your castmates? Everybody sees your chemistry on screen, but what's it like when you're behind the scenes?
I'll give a very short answer to that question, but I'll say one other thing really quickly, which is, Carmen, I had the opportunity to look at videos of auditions that people had sent in, of self-tapes for something recently, and it was such a healing experience for me as an actor, because I saw how amazing everybody was. And you have this feeling when you're auditioning all the time that you were terrible or bad, and that's why you didn't get the part, or you weren't good enough. But watching all these tapes, I was like, oh, these people are all amazing, and that person's right. And it wasn't that anyone was worse or better, that was the right hit for the movie, for the tone, for the thing, and it was such a huge relief. And it just made me have so much love for the work that you do and what you bring to this industry. And the casting directors are really the unsung heroes of the industry in the way that they elevate talent, elevate story, world build. Like it's pretty endless what they contribute to the environment and to our lives personally. Like our lives are changed forever by you. And that's just a gift that is like an unbelievable gift. I think you saw things in me I didn't know about myself when we started working together, and I'm just so grateful for having played this part and the way it changed my life. So I really appreciate it. And yay! And our environment on set is really fun. We play a lot of games. We tell a lot of jokes. We roll around, we laugh, it's a lot of night shooting, it's a lot of giggles.
Yeah, more of that. I think it's a really special bond. I mean, we grew up with each other. We've all seen each other at our best and at our worst, and I don't know, coming back to that every year is such a gift, and it's not fake. Like it is real. And I think like when the show like eventually ends too, that's kind of, we rely on our shooting schedule to kind of like come back to and hang out with each other and like, oh yeah, we're gonna see each other every day, and then in between there's less pressure because we know we're gonna return to that. So I don't know, thinking of like in terms of like the final season, knowing that that's gonna go away, I mean it's really sad. Sort of like bring down the mood.
Bring it down.
Oh, it is so sad.
We'll bring it back up. What was something, again, without like spoiling a plot point, but like what was something that you got to do that was really fun this season? I don't know if this was fun for you, but there's, in the footage we just saw, you're hovering in a cemetery. I don't know if you really did that or were you on a wire?
Yes,
You really hovered.
that was fun.
Yeah, like a little Peter Pan action flying around.
Absolutely, absolutely. I don't know how far I went higher than what is pictured in the trailer.
Yeah.
It was really, really fun.
As an actor, I'm not saying that this is how movies should all be made or TV shows should all be made, but there were a couple one-ers this season, like a one shot where the whole scene takes place in one or two cuts. And what's really fun for an actor is that you really get to build the whole story of that scene. Even if the scene takes 60 seconds or 30 seconds, in that whole scene, you're in control because they're only gonna put one shot in the show, and so from the beginning of the end, the time you spend on camera, you have to tell the whole story. It's not like you can do one take where it's funny and one take where it's sad and one take where it's angry, and then they'll figure it out in the editing room. That one is yours. And I am a control freak and enjoy that. So there was a couple different ones. One of them was with Sadie and I together in the video store. That's not a spoiler. No one freak out. It's just information. And it was just a really fun kind of comedic moment. And we did it, I don't know, 5 or 6 times. And those moments where we all got to come together as actors and really feel the rhythm of the scene and the beats of where each person's language ran into the next person's language. Those are my favorite moments from filming this season.
That's got to be fun too, because it involves the whole crew, right? Everybody's moving, everybody's part of that choreography. If I don't know if the camera's moving around a lot, but
Yeah, no, everyone's pictured, so everyone has to show up in that moment, and I don't know, it's collaborative and so I'd have to agree.
Higher.
The stakes are very high. Timing has to be right.
Who messed it up?
Everyone at different.
Everyone.
Yeah, everyone had one take.
Why we did it 5 or 6 times.
So what do you think you'll miss the most, apart from just the friends, your colleagues?
Job security?
Job security? You'll be all right. You'll be all right. What do you miss most about your character? What do you? I guess the question would be, what part of them would you take with you?
I mean, I really am gonna miss the character. Yeah, because up until this point, like, you never have to like say goodbye to them. It's just see you next season. I don't know. Probably like her confidence. Like, she's just very sure of herself, and she since she kind of like stepped foot onto the show in season 2, like she knows exactly who she is. So kind of, I guess that.
I came into doing Stranger Things pretty, 7 months after I left drama school. And when I was in school, I was like, okay, breathe, shoulders down, back straight, calm. Like Alexander Tate, there's all these things that I was trying to work out of myself, learn not to do. And whether it's gonna be good for me as an actor or bad for me as an actor in the long run, I don't know. But the Duffer Brothers were like, no. Do everything you do. I want to see all your weaknesses. I want to see your dorkiness, your weird run, your shoulders up, your inability to breathe, how quickly you speak. I want to see all of it. Give us all of it. And I think I will miss most being given permission to be completely myself.
And actually, both women just described themselves. Because when Sadie came in at 14, a version of themselves. But when Sadie came in at 14, you were all of those things already. you were, you know, and it's not like, oh, she was Max, because obviously none of that is her story, but all of those things were what got you the job. Plus your talent, obviously.
Full season, and then another portion of season 4 to come, and then season 5. And it'll be fun to see where you guys go. I hope you make it. Make it to season 5. But thank you so much for being with us. Let's hear it. Ladies,
Thank you.
That does it for Netflix's Your Favorite Obsession panel here at FYSEE. I really enjoyed all of you. Thank you for being such a warm audience and such a receptive audience. Take care, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you for coming to Netflix FYC.